Cyclone Nation, what better way to kick off the 2025 college football season than cheering on your Cyclones in the Aer Lingus College Football Classic in Dublin, Ireland? Whether it's a quick trip to Dublin for the game, a multi-city adventure throughout the Irish countryside, or premium game day hospitality, there is a package for you. Visit cyclones2ireland.com for information on official travel and hospitality packages. That's Cyclones, the number 2, Ireland.com.
Welcome into Kickin' It. I am Jeff Woody. We're here on a Victory Monday, it was fairly stressful Victory Monday, but it's still a Victory Monday nonetheless. We are, as always, brought to you by Kelderman Manufacturing, Kelderman.com. We are coming up on the holiday season. If you need to buy anything that is, for the creative or the person with big needs, whether it's agriculture or metal or something like that, go to Kelderman.com. There's a whole lot of stuff that you could purchase on Kelderman.com. I think I don't know. Grant, how was your day?
Which day are you referring to?
You're talking Saturday.
Oh, Saturday was a good day, man. Moved the bees from Ankeny to Indianola. Got stung on my knee for the first time.
Oh, he's that dick.
Yeah. Indianola bees stung me, but got them all ready to go for winter.
Proud of you.
Yeah, good to go.
Aiden, sorry.
My Saturday was also good because obviously the boys won. Stressful game.
That's fine. Aiden, how was...
we had friends over too for Friendsgiving.
I don't care. Aiden, how was your weekend?
I was in Vegas.
Do people say it like that?
No, I just do. We had a great weekend out in Vegas. I was staying at the D. C-Dub was over at Circa. The D is a resort, just to be clear. That's not anything else besides that.
Sure was.
Watched the game at Bar Canada. We had a table reserved for both the Iowa game and the Iowa State game, so we were there throughout the day. And then we saw Plain White Tees, which I said this to my brother. Seeing the Plain White Tees saying, "Hey there, Delilah," was a bucket list item that I didn't know I had.
We were talking about this before.
It was very cool.
We were talking about this before we recorded. Early 2000s pop punk, hard to beat in concert.
Yeah.
Hard to beat.
So
I went to All Time Low when they came to Des Moines, and that is A+.
All American Rejects were incredible too.
Hey there, Plain White Tees, they got more than one song?
They do, but I don't know. They played a whole set. So.
Yeah, there's some. It's like it's sort of a one hit wonder, but they've got other okay songs that you recognize if you hear them, but you don't know the title.
There was one point where he's like, "Hey, everyone out there, who knows that we got a new album?" And there were like 4 people that went, "Yeah," and the rest of the people were like, "We didn't know you still made music, but it was good. It was good. It was
good
cool.
for you guys.
Yeah.
Proud of you.
I forgot you were a band."
Good weekend out in Vegas.
Did you have to babysit Williams much?
No, Ashley was with us.
Oh man,
Didn't get too out of control.
I was when we were with Van Winks and Leah on the post game show or the halftime and post game show, I was talking to Matt and I was like, I bet that Aiden is having to just because Aiden doesn't drink and
I don't drink. I don't gamble.
Chris,
I exist.
And Chris likes to have fun in Vegas.
Aiden is Mormon.
So I was like, man, I feel bad for Aiden. So luckily you didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
So Iowa State beats Utah 31-28. It was a game. It had things happen.
Jeff, Iowa State should have won that game like 35-10.
Yeah, and so I think the takeaway on this, I feel like the fan sentiment, either one of you who are more interneted than I am, the fan sentiment on this felt like an escape, and Iowa State screwed up the whole thing and got away with it, right? More or less, fan sentiment?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't really paying attention to. Like I said, we had friends over on Saturday, so I wasn't really on social media at all. But we were watching the game as it was going on. I was like, we can't play much worse. Special teams was. Yeah, I don't want to say bad. They're terrible.
It was really bad. So there are a couple nuances to that I kind of wanted to get into about the Utah game itself, more than like the Iowa State team as a whole throughout the year, but sort of. So Iowa State, the way that they win games is with complementary football. That's what they've done all year. They have they have an elite passing defense. They have a spotty run defense. Now that you've got between Ebel, McLaughlin, and Sadowski.
And he's come on the last 2 games.
Yeah, so Dom being there, Verdun being healthy, like those 5 guys in there makes you feel like that defense actually is back to what it was in the early part of the year before they got super hurt. But the run defense has been hit or miss throughout the year.
To touch on that, I don't know what's up with Brzezina. I thought he'd be back 2 games ago. And
it's a soft tissue
and
injury.
Bramer.
Yeah, again, don't someone got a knee injury.
Matt, just be honest with us. Gosh darn it.
Well, he doesn't care about what you think. He cares about what the other coaches think. And
Well, I know Mauser's listening, so Mauser, just tell us what's up with Bramer.
If they have to practice for Bramer and then he's not there, and then they've spent all that wasted practice time practicing for Bramer and then he doesn't end up playing, then that's a good thing for Iowa State because they're preparing for someone who's not there.
No one's listening to our show. Not from Kansas State.
No, not for our show, but like the injury report. That's what they're going to pay attention to. Campbell's injury report. That's why. That's why that happens, is because then you're just wasting their practice time with maybe 18 might play, and then they got to waste time watching that film and practicing for that, and then it doesn't happen.
I'm going to text Dion, say, all right, quit bullshitting us around. What's going on here?
He probably won't tell you.
He'll ignore me.
Anyway, so the way they've won this year is complimentary football, and what that means is that you can afford to punt on the 50-yard line because your defense is going to do, or you believe that the defense is going to do a good job. You can set up a return because you feel like your special teams unit is strong enough on a punt return or a kick return, is strong enough to gamble. And if you get that return and it comes out to the 45-yard line, great. If the return doesn't work and you just field it and you run backwards 5 yards and you get down on the 15-yard line, your offense is going to be able to take over. And so you can, in the transitionary group, the special teams unit between your offense and defense, they're going to contribute to the game in a way that is a beneficial transaction between offense and defense. And for the most part, that's held true this year. But Utah, that game was very much offense dominated Utah's defense. Iowa State's defense dominated Utah's offense. Utah's special teams dominated Iowa State.
Yeah, and sorry, if you had a point, you're going to lead into that. I was going to talk about just individual things that happened.
And so, yeah, the list of things that happened as far as special team misexecution, missed field goal, which...
Well, let's start with the blocked field goal that didn't count, but Utah saw something on film where
you can just pull somebody out of the way and then send somebody right behind him. That's illegal.
Well, so yes, and I guess maybe that's why.
That's why.
That's why
what that is. So the reason why that block happened and why they called defensive holding is you can do that. Like if you did that 10 times, it gets called once or twice. And so defensive coaches will tell you to do that, which is like...
When you say that, what happened?
Which is the defensive lineman, let's say there's two guys over the guard. I think it's where the block came from, guard or the tackle.
So Utah had two guys jump over both guards.
So one of them is going to... One defensive lineman, so let's say there's four guys. Two on one guard and two on another guard. Each pair of Utah players will have one guy grab the jersey of the Iowa State player and pull him in a direction, whether that's down or to the right or to the left or whatever it is. And then the other Utah guy is going to go where that player is pulling him away from.
And hippity up over top of the line.
Yeah, that. And so you pull him out of the way and jump, and that's holding. You can't grab another person and pull them away. That's literally holding.
And that makes sense because they easily just hop the line.
The whole thing is that defensive holding on actual defensive snaps, defenses hold all the time. Again, you're going to do it most plays, and it's just daring the referees to call it, because if I'm Dom Orange and I can grab a guard and the center's blocking me and I'm grabbing the guard, well, if I've got both of them, then that means one of them's not getting up to Sadowski, and Sadowski can just run through on blocks. So defenses hold all the time. It's just very rarely called. So that was a pretty egregious one where they're just like yanking somebody out of the way to jump over. So like they saw it on film that if we cheat, we can get a field goal block. So that one, I would say, appropriate call. I would say got lucky that they called it. It's just they enforced a rule that should be enforced. So that one, I would say, not as much of a mistake. But there were several mistakes. Mistake one, missed field goal that just pushed it. Yep. Wasn't good. Snap was fine. Hold was fine. Push, not a good kick. The dropped punt.
Second one in a row. Second game in a row.
That was not good.
Very uncharacteristic.
Yeah, and I don't know necessarily what that's about. And I don't know if it was like a weird, because sometimes punts can spin weird. Like I remember Tress Way. He's right now the punter for the Commanders. He was a lefty punter and he punted at Oklahoma. And I remember when you watch Tress Way on film, now in the NFL, there's enough film and the returners are good enough. They don't do this, but in college, you'd watch it. And because he's a lefty, he puts a lot, like to use a golf example, if he's a a left-handed golfer, he has a heavy draw. So like it pulls hard left to right.
And the ball's spinning the opposite way that a right-footed punter would be spinning.
So it's like a baseball player trying to hit a softball where like you expect it to go down and they throw a rise ball and just your expectations are wrong. That you're expecting it to go down, it goes up. And for a punter like Tress Way, that he'd kick it like 30 degrees to the left and it would come in at an angle like 30 degrees to the right in addition to going downfield. So I remember Lenz fielding some of those punts and he's like running over his left shoulder because the punt is drawing him so far that way because it's like spinning.
Well, there's quite a few guys that muff punts when Kirby was punting too because he's lefty.
And he would put it 6 miles up in the air.
Yeah.
And so that kind of stuff happens. That was a right-footed punter, but it's still like a ball could go farther than you think. It could nose up a little bit longer, which is going to draw it farther or going to push it farther. Like, but long and short of it, Jalen Knoll should be good enough to catch it. Like so the missed field goal, 100% a mistake by Iowa State. Muff punt, 100% mistake by Iowa State. This other special teams mistake was obviously the blocked punt for a touchdown.
And Jacob Ellis did not. It was his guy. He olayed and he looked back right away.
Yeah,
and nothing on Perkins. I mean, is fine.
Can't do it.
No, it was a fine. And what's the most important aspect of a punt?
Block him, get it off,
Getting it off.
get the punt off.
Yes.
Punt
And so it looked like Ellis was just too quick to go down and cover because he knew right away as soon as the guy. He snapped his head around and he was in the end zone when they recovered it. So he knew right away, oh shit.
Yeah. So, and then, well, it's not a special teams mistake, but we'll include the pick six as a substantial mistake. Because really those are the four, and I said this on the post-game show, if you have 200, if there were 200 snaps in that game, which I don't know, maybe between offense, defense, and special teams, 200 total snaps that Iowa State played, they won 190 of those 200. Offense, defense, and special teams. The ones that they didn't were enormous plays.
Amplified,
for Utah. So let's take those for a second and kind of go piece by piece with them. The field goal, it was just bad kick. Like I would say you can't get too down on it though, because like no kicker is ever 100%. Like
no, and Kennard's a dog.
And how many kicks has Justin Tucker missed this year? You know, like 6 or 7 field goals this year. Like the Elliott, the guy from Philadelphia, he missed like 3 last week. Like it is not uncommon for a field goal kicker to miss. So you can't crucify him every time he misses. If you're 80% on field goals, you're doing pretty damn good. And so that's 1 out of every 5 times you miss a kick. So not great, but not the worst thing on earth. The muff punt can happen. Like that is, there's no one to point at and say Utah made a great play. Like Iowa State just screwed that one up. That one I will give 100% responsibility to Iowa State. You must be able to catch the ball. The blocked punt, I would give 70% of, or let's call it 60% of the blame to Iowa State. And the inverse of that is 40% of the credit has to go to Utah.
Sure.
So that they ran any block look. It's not the same block look week to week. Like that, a thing that people might not understand about like punt block and special teams and stuff. You don't carry like block number 1. We're going to run block number 1 against everybody because their formations are different. Their personnel is different. You want to run a block every week and it's more or less the same, but you're going to stress the gaps between players or the players themselves that you feel like you have the best access to the ball. So if you have a really good blocker, like it was Jake Knott on, I think our punt cover team was me and AJ at guards. And then I think Jeremiah George and Jake Knott at tackles, and then Jeremy Reeves and Deion Broomfield or Jacques Washington at guards. There's not a lot of places to attack that if you're going to come for a block. So where you're going to try and get something is you're going to try and force somebody to take a wider split and maybe get an access zone from that. Well, when we would watch film with someone else, you might be like, hey, in this case, Jacob Ellis, 44. He likes to get down in coverage really fast.
Yep.
Let's go right at 44. And so their block look 1000% was based on the film that Ellis had put on film or in his history to say he wants to get down the field. So Utah ran a block based on the film that Iowa State had and executed that play perfectly. So you have to give them a little bit of credit in that they did it really, really well and Iowa State screwed it up. So it's a combination of both Utah being really good at non-offensive touchdowns and special teams, and Iowa State screwing up. Like both of those things are true on that play.
I would also say too that my gripe on that too is when the ball gets into the end zone, don't try to jump on it, kick it out of the back of the end zone.
Yeah,
bat it out. Don't try and fall on it. Which I know it's how often you're going to encounter that in your career? Maybe once. hopefully never. So I'm sure, Perkins is like, I don't know what to do here. And you try to jump on the ball, which is normal. When you have a normal ball just in the field, you do want to jump on it,
Right.
Unless you can scoop and score. But in that instance, you should have just batted it out of the back.
Yeah, just punt it, kick it to third row of the stands.
Yeah, that'd be kind of fun, actually. If I
Just knock a hot dog out of somebody's hands. Nachos!
and then go up and just nuke because it'll be safety, and then get the ball back and just nuke it to him.
Yep, there you go. Send it back to the 0-yard line.
I will say too that mishap in the game for Utah, missed field goal at the very end of the game.
Yeah.
That kicker was committed to Iowa State and decommitted 3 days before signing day.
Whoops.
And then he committed to Colorado. And when Coach Prime came in,
Cleaned house. Yeah.
and he went to Utah. So he played the long game. I appreciate you.
It's really supporting the Cyclones.
Yeah.
And then before we move on to the other things, like the good things that Iowa State did, or the more critical plays, as if these aren't critical plays, but the pick six, I would say that is about a 50-50.
Can I use a Jeff Woody analogy for this?
Please do.
Yeah. So Rocco's really good at just zipping the balls, zipping it across the middle or deep, whatever, letting it rip. Those short, kind of intermediate, like, where am I going to get this one? How hard when you throw it? It's almost like if you're a pitcher, you're playing baseball, a pitcher, it comes back to you, or maybe it's hit kind of between first base and the pitcher, and you get it. Do you throw it overhand, underhand? As a pitcher, what do you do?
First base.
Yep. So overhand, you can kind of zip it in too fast. Underhand, maybe a little easier. So we always said go underhand. Rocco is almost on the short ones, overhanding it when he should metaphorically be underhanding
That's
it.
a great analogy.
Let's go.
Doesn't it feel nice? Just be able to communicate a point like that?
Kind of, yeah. I'm also terrible at telling stories, so I feel like I practiced that one on the way here. I did.
No,
in my head, I did.
I like that. So I'll run with that. So he's trying to throw it to first base and puts too much stank on it, and it's a little bit behind him. Well, when you do that, he's either gonna catch it or it's gonna get thrown to somebody else. Even if he doesn't bat it up, that ball is probably caught by somebody. It would just be like catch ground interception versus popped up in the air.
Because I think had he tossed it a little softer, Noel probably could have caught it. But
it would have been like a 4-yard gain or something like
a little
that.
too much zip on it, but
Yeah. But so I would say 50-50 in the Utah or Iowa State screwed up. Utah did a good thing. That is the 21st Utah had not had a pick six this year, but that's the 21st consecutive season that Utah has had a pick six. Kyle Whittingham has been there for 20 years. Is that a coincidence? I think not. That is a thing that they are really good at. And there's a skill to actually getting a pick six, turning an interception into a touchdown. And what that looks like is nobody celebrates until the ball is in the end zone. And if you go back and watch that play, so the 50-50 part, the first snap, roll out, throw it behind him, 100% Rocco's fault. Iowa State, not good. From that point, that's Utah making a play. And when that dude caught it, it's a linebacker. He's not super fast. He's fast enough, but he's not super fast. He's not going to run away from the whole team. Everybody on Utah's team immediately starts sprinting down. It's like teams that are in basketball that are really good at fast breaks. You know that they're good at fast breaks because there's just so much pressure. Like Hoy ball. If somebody got a turnover, Matt Thomas in the corner, Naz in the other corner, someone's going to, and they get to where they are
and
so
they
fast.
know their responsibilities.
Exactly. In that fast break, it's a chaos moment that they turn, that you're in chaos, but they're not. And Utah, when they got that interception, it was, to take the cardinal color glasses off, it was really pretty to watch them just, everybody found somebody to block. And if you don't have somebody to block, you run with the guy down the field. And you're not looking and like high-fiving the guy on the way in. You're looking behind you to see if there's anybody that's going to run him down. Well,
because Noel
for sure would have.
Yeah.
And what they did then, and you have to then, okay, guy's coming up behind him. You can't just turn around and just plant the guy because that's an illegal blindside block. You would get the ball still, but it would be 15 yards back from wherever that hit happened. So you'd be 1st and 10 on like the 40-yard line, which is cool from an interception, but it's not a touchdown. But if you then just kind of get in the way, use your back, screen him like
scrape paint.
Scrape paint. That's what Shane would always say. You just use your back to get in the way. You don't have to get a lot of him. Just break his stride because your guy's still running. So the first 50% of that play, bad interception, not good for Iowa State. The back 50%, you have to tip your cap to Utah because that was a really good play. They executed that pick six to perfection in the way that they have done for now 21 consecutive years. So like, the two non-offensive touchdowns they got, you have to credit at least some of that to Utah being good at non-offensive touchdowns. And
I don't want to.
Iowa State sucks. But this is like, if you're Kyle Whittingham, and this kind of leads into the end of game situation. If you're Kyle Whittingham and you're looking at your roster, and you are honestly looking at your roster, you know your defense is at least okay. Thought your defense would be better. Misplayed that hand a little bit because they kept playing man on Jaden Higgins, which was stupid.
Yeah. What are you doing?
If he's
Also, he's over 1,000 yards now.
good for him. And Jalen Knowles, what, 30 yards away, 40 yards away?
24.
Yeah, 24 yards away.
Yeah.
Come on now.
That's
do it
sweet.
do it against K-State.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at your defense, you feel like your defense at least has a puncher's chance. You know your offense stinks. Like, for the past 4 or 5 weeks, they have been bad. So how are you
7 in a row? That's nuts.
how are you going to score if you are honestly looking at that roster? You would say, we need to spend more time in trying to capitalize on the 1 or 2 opportunities we might get for a punt block. They just consistently will work on getting pick sixes. It's like Iowa the past 2 or 3 years. Their offense is hot trash.
Yeah.
So their defense and special teams has to take chances to score because they know their offense won't. And that's what really the same Utah this year is Iowa from 2 years ago. It's the same team, just without as good of a defense.
Well, and not really adding to that point, but our guy JT Wistersill, who we had on in our summer series, he's convinced. And I like to listen to the opposing teams, some of their podcasts leading up to the game. And he was saying this week, he called it though. He called, I think we're going to pick sixes this week. But he's convinced this is Whittingham's last year.
Which it might be. I mean, they've named a head coach in waiting, so that could be 1 year.
Which is kind of silly.
I mean, it's probably just to keep that guy from going to take a head job somewhere else.
I like that, but it's also like I don't know.
It's like it's the engagement period.
I think it instills confidence in the program too, just like recruiting wise, being like, well, we know that even if he's gone,
there's still consistency within the program.
But if Whittingham hasn't announced like it's my last year, it's interesting that
they've probably talked about it.
I mean, like publicly.
Yeah. But yeah, like in the Utah game, the 4 or 5 plays that Iowa State had that Utah won the snap. Iowa State won pretty much every other one. With the other one bad part of that game, I would say, is when that backup quarterback came in.
Who is this guy? What happened to Brandon Rose, the guy that played versus BYU?
Maybe he's hurt. I don't know. But he's not in the scouting report. Who the hell is this kid?
Also, sorry to interrupt you. I clicked on his profile on ESPN to see like who is this guy. His head was shaved in his picture. Like he's got like a buzzed head. And
he had a rat tail.
Obviously, yeah, he had some kind of...
He had a braid.
He had some kind of mullet. Like, whatever he had going on. They pulled this guy from Section L, row 2.
we need somebody who can maybe just run a little bit.
Yeah, you kind of look like Cam Rising. Can you play quarterback?
Yeah, so they put him in. And Iowa State's defense is organized around Isaac Wilson and what that offense looks like. And then...
When he got hurt, I was kind of like, shit, because Isaac Wilson wasn't doing anything.
No, he wasn't doing anything. And then this guy comes in, and it's not that he's a better quarterback or that their offense is better without Isaac Wilson and with this kid. It's that Iowa State didn't know that he could run. They had one good drive. The whole game. One. They scored one offensive touchdown. And the other points they got were, so they had one offensive touchdown on the first drive, and that kid came in because they didn't know that he could run. They had the very first drive of the game when they threw a bomb right away. Tez Williams played it well. Just guy made a play. Then they gained, I think, 8 yards after that and then kicked a field goal. The next field goal was after the muff punt. They had 1st and 10 at like the 21 and then had 3 consecutive plays where they lost yards.
Tom Orange.
And I think Sadowski made a play on it.
Yep,
but like
he did too.
It was like 4th and 22. So had they just kicked the field goal on first down, their odds would have been better at making it. So the kid made it anyway. So they had 2 field goal drives that they didn't really even get in the red zone. I think maybe on that, they started with the ball in the red zone or just outside of it on the muff punt, and then they went backwards. And then the only other time they got in the red zone was on that one drive.
And it looked like Iowa State could do whatever they want on offense.
For sure.
Like Utah's defense is good, but Iowa State's offense was just better.
Yeah. And so that when Iowa State scored to go up, which the ball's on Taylor Mauser to call the double pass.
I loved it.
It's the perfect situation to do that. It's the perfect situation because you have your heavy formation in. Your heavy formation Every single snap that you had run it to this point is an inside run following the fullback. Okay, heavy personnel in. Got it. Leaning run. It's 3rd and 2. They need the first down.
Yep.
You had already taken, like, based on game situation, there's not much clock left. They don't have any, they have one timeout. So they need this first down. They're going to go to their bread and butter play. They're going to run the ball downhill. You have Carson Hansen in, and that's the guy who you're going to run in your heavy package on 3rd down. Everything is telling Utah this is a downhill run. And they run that toss, like that toss power, 4 or 5 times earlier in that game out of that formation.
They set it up.
Everything about that indication was that a double pass would work here. Every single bit of that. The balls to actually call that, though, because what happens if Hansen underthrows that by 5 more yards and that gets batted down?
4th and 2.
4th and 2, you have to, and at that point, you got to take a high percentage play. You can't screw around. You can't throw a double pass on 4th down. I mean, maybe if you got some even bigger balls, you could, but like
his balls are big. He might. I don't know.
That's the right call. I mean, that if you're going to have a trick play that works, that's the situation that your trick play is going to work. And like to actually call it in that situation, though, is super confident. And it was executed. I would say perfection would just be Hansen throws it 10 yards farther and it's in the end zone.
But it worked better that way because then some more time.
A little bit of time got taken off the clock.
I almost want him to, like, when he scored the game-winning touchdown, I almost wanted him to go down like the 2.
And what I would say why I'm okay with that not happening. So a lot of people in like Van Winks had the exact same reaction that you did, which was, I think literally I was responding to Van Winks. That's when he said too much time left. When you text me too much time left, like both people, same reaction. And my thought on, I don't know if I called you a negative Nancy and him a negative Nancy or just him.
Just him.
But the reason why I was okay with that, let's go back to what we just talked about before. Utah had not gotten the ball into the red zone. They had one successful drive with a quarterback who can't throw, and they didn't know he was even on the depth chart. And so now you go, stop him from running and basically make him throw the ball down the field. They had one completion for, I think, 12 yards and no other successful offensive plays. So Utah wanted that game to be sloppy, crazy, pick sixes, block punts. They needed that to score and win. When that drive happens, the only unit that can win that game for you is the offense. Your special teams, you're not going to be able to punt and get them to muff a punt again. So
they're worst of the 3.
They're worst of the 3. So like there's too much time left. Yeah, if it's Kansas, there's too much time left.
Yeah.
If it's Colorado, there's too much time left. But it's Utah in that constitution. So it wasn't like, Iowa State's going to win this. But even let's play a worst case scenario. Let's say that kick goes in and it goes into overtime. Who's winning that game?
Iowa State is.
It's going to be touchdown and then, or they go, again, they had been in the red zone one time on that first drive when he came in. So they're going to go field goal. Iowa State just has to get in the end zone to win the game. They win the game in overtime. Like that game was probably going to be won by Iowa State anyway. It was just nicer that it was a missed field goal at the end of regulation.
One thing I'd said too, and I put because I like to take notes as I'm watching the game, was, and I've kind of had this gripe on Mauser sometimes this year of don't be too cute. Like if you're in the red zone, don't try to be too cute. It was 2nd and 2 from the 2, or second goal from the 2, and that was when Iowa State, I think they call a timeout on first down, ran a play, whatever, got to the 2-yard line, and then had to call another timeout because of substitution, which I think is such a bullshit rule of like
the fat guy rule.
Yeah, like
I love the fat guy rule.
Yeah, but then
the fat guy rule.
But just the fact that they're allowed to like run the play clock down to.
Don't you talk trash about the fat guy rule?
No, someone's got to change. But that play they had called, I think that was a play where Rocco got it and like tossed it to Noel quick, and he fumbled, and Utah got it, and then they're like, no.
But they had already heard the whistle. Everyone on the field had already heard the whistle.
Oh,
They stopped running. My
only gripe was if it's 2nd and 2 from the 2, run QB power. I don't care if they know it's coming. Run QB power with Hansen and Steve-O and Burkle, or bring in James, whoever, bring in a lineman behind you and just make Rocco a rag doll and just be the vessel with the ball to get across the goal line. Just run QB sneak. Yeah, I mean that does have its place, but if you don't every once in a while do stuff like that, then I don't care. If they know it's coming, just run it.
Yeah, it's probably, you still need to be able to execute it to get to score in that moment, and they did. I
did like a lot of the play calls he did have though. There was one where Rocco and Hansen were both in the backfield, and it was a direct snap to Carson, and he I don't know, got a few yards, maybe 15 or so yards, and Rocco went the other way. So there were some some fun play calls in there. I know. I think for Mauser's first year being an offensive coordinator, he's been
Really, really good.
really good.
Really, really good. Yeah.
I've been super impressed.
But yeah, that game. The one thing I do, we don't necessarily have to wrap up Utah necessarily, but I do. It is a key point just to kind of illustrate how Utah needed to win this game, and they almost did enough to do it. Hidden yards.
I think Utah killed us.
The listeners know, because I already said this number. I did the math before the post-game show because I wanted to see what the number actually was. So hidden yards. Aiden, what do you got?
It's going to be like Utah plus 10,000. I'm going to go with Utah plus 160.
Grant?
I like that guess.
That's why I guessed it.
I'll go Utah plus 169.
Grant's closer. Utah plus 180 as far as hidden yardage.
Props to us. We're both pretty close. That's probably the closest we both been.
That's
The only reason I was going to go 161, but I had to go 169 because, but I just knew that it was a lot.
So
I mean,
I want to go closer
two
to 200,
non-offensive
but-
touchdowns.
yeah, that's hefty.
So again, the reason why, just catch this up on the non-offensive touchdown part, it's 100 yards that your offense doesn't have to gain because your defense or special teams did it for you. So even if the other team gains 100 yards, that is negated by your 100 yards you didn't have to gain because they're already in the end zone. And so whenever you get a non-offensive touchdown in the hidden yard statistic, that again, more of Jeff's stat, but I hope it catches on somewhere, you just add it to the hidden yard statistic, because the other offense, again, would have to gain 100 yards to just make up for the fact that you scored without getting any. So
At one point, too, Iowa State had run like 35 plays in Utah to only run 9.
correct. So Utah had 180 hidden yards. They had 224 total yards of offense. So add that 180.
I'm not good at math. I think it's 404.
How many total yards did Iowa State have? 405.
Oh, wow.
So adding hidden yards in is what Utah needed to do. In order to win that game, they had to do that. And so when you see 405 yards for Iowa State and 224 for Utah, wow, they beat the hell out of them.
That's happened a lot with Iowa State games.
Right.
Where you're like, Iowa State.
You outgain them by a zillion.
Yeah.
And they have like 150 yards.
But Iowa won by 4. It's
Right.
like-
And that's because the non-offensive touchdown part is if you start on the 50-yard line, you only have to gain 50 yards every. And all yards are. The only reason we care about yards is because it generally correlates with points. But it doesn't always correlate with points. So when you look at yards, you're like, oh man, they gained 405 yards. They're the better team. The whole point is get a W. Have more points on the scoreboard at the end of the game than the other team. That's it. Yards are just a means to get there. Utah used the special teams ones and the non-offensive yards in order to do that, and that's what they had to do. That was Utah's best shot in their current configuration, and Iowa State still won by 4. Won by 3, excuse me. It was their best shot they could give, and Iowa State won by 3.
Are you looking for the perfect gift for the Cyclone fan in your life? The Cyclone Fanatic shop has you covered with exclusive gear and fan favorites to show your Cyclone pride. Shop local, support independent coverage.
Independent coverage.
Coverage.
Yeah, Cyclone Fanatic Shop. There's fun NIL stuff, especially now that men's and women's basketball and wrestling and football are all going on right now.
Did you know, Aiden, I don't know if they still have it, but they sold out quick. The Jack Trice Bars shirt.
Yeah.
It's like a bar shirt that when it got wet, or like when you sweat,
Oh, yeah.
behind it said "I will."
Ooh.
I designed that shirt.
Really?
I did.
Nice.
Because I've got a shirt that says Boulder for the Boulder, the 10K run in Boulder, Colorado.
Okay.
That when you sweat,
It's BOLDER, BOULDER.
Yep. When you sweat, behind it says, "Oh yes, I will."
Uh-huh.
I don't know what that means, but I sent that to Exploding Lemon. Mike, what's his name? Mike Mertz.
Yep, Mike Martz.
Yeah,
our guy.
sent to Mike Martz. I was like, hey man, this would be really cool if you could do because this is when the Jack Trice logo is
Like first
Yep.
thing. Yeah.
yeah, like coming back. Obviously, it's been a thing before. I was like, hey, try this, and so he did. So yeah, I helped design that shirt. Cool shirt.
Nice.
Cool shirt.
That is a cool shirt. So what's the website again, Aiden?
CycloneFanaticShop.com.
.com.
We didn't want to overcomplicate it.
Cyclone
Fanatic
Fanatic
Shop.com.
Shop.com. .com. You know what other website's important that you can win? CyclonesToIreland.com. You can go to CyclonesToIreland.com for the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. Now, this is going to be a preview this weekend of that game, boyo.
A bunch of dinguses.
A bunch of dinguses that you're playing there. The Wildcats from Manhattan. You go to CyclonesToIreland.com to plan your trip to watch Iowa State again beat Kansas State after they beat them this weekend. Get your trip planned today.
These friggin' dinguses better not stop the team from getting to 10 wins. We won't hear the end of it if they do.
Before we get to Kansas State, I did want to go over like some tiebreaker stuff.
Time out. I want to talk about the Arizona State BYU ending.
That was bananas.
Oh, what a
Did you get to watch
disaster.
that? Did you get to watch that while you were there?
Yeah, we were at Bar Canada, and so they had TVs all over the place, and we were locked into that game.
Are you saying Bar Canada?
Yeah.
Bark Canada is like
Bar-
PetSmart or PetsMart?
Bar Canada.
Like, hello, governor.
Bark
I don't think
Canada.
that's Canadian.
Hello, governor.
I think that's British.
You know what? I thought it was Canadian because I first learned about that game from this girl my buddy used to be married to, and she was Canadian. So that's why I thought it's Canadian.
It's not.
No.
It's not. I mean, technically, Canada it was part of the UK for a while, and now they still kind of honor like the Queen and now the King, and it's sort of a complicated relationship with the UK, but it's not an overtly Canadian thing.
Anyway, yeah, saw everything. What a mess.
Was bananas. So
what would you guys have done? They're up 28-23 with however
we had a play for this exact thing.
Why would you not score a touchdown? You're on the 10-yard line.
Because so basically what you're trying to do, the worst case scenario is if you try and run a play, they rip the ball out, they get the ball back, they score it, a pick six or a fumble, whatever. If you're trying to run an offensive play, you're exposing the ball a lot more versus
just Jeff Woody. Hold on to two hands.
That's true. But like even so in that Oklahoma State game, it's more or less the situation. You have the win. You're just trying to protect the ball. The second down play, I'm holding the ball and I'm suspended in air because people are trying to rip the ball out. If a guy gets a finger in there just a little bit more and that rips the thing, I mean, that goes. So the play that we ran, we had in, and it would have worked to perfection had Arizona State done this, which is you come out in punt formation and you run as tight or as wide as you can, and you point at the guy that you're going to be responsible for. And you put your shield guys, one or two shield guys back closer to the punter, and then one or two shield guys at wherever there's an exposed player. So if they're going to have 11 guys in the line of scrimmage, you can only block with 10 of them because you got to snap it to the punter anyway. And you might even put a faster guy back there, depending on how you want to do it. So what you do, because the game can't end on a penalty, is you snap the ball to the punter, especially they're on the 10-yard line. You got 90 yards backwards to go. You snap it to Jeremy Reeves, and Jeremy Reeves runs around like a cat on the field and just squirrel all the way. And when he looks at the clock, he slides down. What's everybody else doing in this time? Tackling the defense.
I remember
Hold the piss at you. Try and do everything. You grab their jersey, you grab their face mask, you grab the horse collar, you grab anything you can to tackle them. There's going to be 8 flags in the field, and they call holding, they call face mask, they call horse collar, replay 4th down. But you know what happened? All the time has run off the clock because Jeremy Reeves has been running around, or the punter has been running around until the clock gets to 0. So what happens after that? 15-yard face mask, offense number 32, 15-yard penalty, replay, 4th down, 0 seconds on the clock, 1 untimed down. Take a knee, game over.
Yeah.
That's the way that we would do it. And this throwing it up in the air thing, I don't mind that idea, but the risk that you run is what just happened.
Yeah.
Which is
the fans are on the field.
The fans are on the field, but also like the refs have to find when that thing lands.
Yeah.
So it's up to like, do you throw it into a vacant portion of the stand? Do you nuke that thing straight up in the air and hope that it lands in like, short of the fan so no one can reach up and touch it? Because it was only like 0.3 of a second, which is that fast. So if
it's enough time
to get a snap off. So if a guy doesn't, like, if the fan, instead of reaching up for catching it, he catches it down at his hip, then the clock's run out. So like, I don't like that play as a run the clock out unless there's 1 second left or 2 seconds left.
Sure, going to have it because if they lost 40 yards, now BYU's got 30 yards to throw a pass,
and that should have been intentional grounding. It's under the circumstances. In order to get intentional grounding, you need 3 criteria need to be applied. 1, you're in the pocket. 2, there is no receiver nearby. And 3, you're under duress in some sort. He just caught it and threw it. But nobody really weren't trying to block. They're just trying not to get a holding call. There is some duress there. So you're trying to, that should have been intentional grounding, which runs into the same problem as the holding calls. You just tackle them on offense. It's the same thing, is that got an untimed down. Like, clock's out. Time's over.
And I don't get chucking it when you could just kneel it down. I mean, I get chucking it because,
you have to burn
because in the air it's going to take
you have to burn the remaining time before you get to 0. So that's what we would always do. Is I don't remember literally the sign for that play from the sideline was you just make the holding call like a referee does. I remember that. And you just do that. And we would practice that at the end of Thursday, because Thursday was our sort of unpadded practice. We practice that every Thursday.
So, but I also remember that. But I also remember when the punter would grab it, and then as soon as someone would come at him, he would step out of the back of the end zone. So
take a safety.
If that were the case here, would the game be over with the safety?
Because it was a 4-point game, right? It was a 4-point game, 5-point game.
Yeah.
So run out of the back of the end zone. If you're so there's 6 seconds.
But then if everyone was holding and Jimmy Reeves runs out of the back of the end zone for a safety, is the game over then? Even if one play still has to go.
I mean, if you have to kick it through the back of the end zone.
Yeah, I like yours better, where you just go down and then next play just
go down, just take a knee, and like even if I might be getting the rule slightly wrong, where that might just be the game might be over because it's an offensive penalty versus a defensive penalty, but either way the clock gets to 0. If they give you an untimed down, you take a knee. If they don't give you an untimed down, and again I might be messing the rules up, then the clock's at 0 anyway. Like that's the way that I would have done it. But anyway, they get the fact that 2 things as far as litigating that with the officials, they didn't call a 15-yard unsportsmanlike penalty on the stands, because they should have done that. If someone on the sideline runs onto the field, then you have to penalize the team for not controlling the game environment. So like if there's an assistant coach for we're talking about this before the Iowa State Auburn game. If there's an Auburn assistant coach that runs onto the field and starts getting in the face of an Iowa State player
on the court,
instant technical, because you're not allowed to be on the court unless you are allowed to be on the court, and that's players, officials, and coaches during timeouts, and that's it. And so if there's Red Panda, is she going to be there?
No, she'll probably be there for whatever the next home game is though.
But if you have if the fans were on the field, that should have been a penalty. Also, it should have been intentional grounding. And so
they would double up.
It would have been an intentional grounding during the play, which would have been a spot foul, which is 10 years back from wherever it was. And then you get another 15 that should have been called based on the fans rushing the field. So instead of taking that play from the 49, you should be taking that call or taking that ball from the 25. And then you're
karma. That's going to catch up to Arizona State. They get in the championship game. Karma. They're going to lose.
Some weird thing's going to happen.
They're going to lose.
And now, how do they get into the championship game, Grant?
They got to win.
They do.
I think if they win and Iowa State win, basically they're in. Some things need to happen, but
before we get to the championship scenario, you do want to thank the Iowa Pork Producers Association.
Don't be a dork. Eat your pork.
That was I think Brent said when he went out there that they made pulled pork and corn at the tailgate, which is a very that's a welcoming thing.
In honor of Iowa.
Thanks, Utah.
The state of Iowa.
Thanks, Utah. I would like to. I plan at some point to go out to that game.
Yeah, I do too. I've never been to Salt Lake City, but I've heard it's beautiful.
I've never been to Utah, the state, before.
They've got really good, a lot of money out there, and they've got a lot of
ski places,
interior design firms that my wife would like to check out. So we may just go there sometime when they're not playing,
and then just happen to.
She don't like cold, so we might go when
and
it's
just
warmer.
go happen to like Jeff Gillooly, somebody on the Utah team.
Who's Jeff Gillooly?
Do you know who Jeff Gillooly is, Aiden? Tanya Harding, is that name come?
Oh yeah,
ring a bell?
Tanya Harding. Yeah.
Jeff Gillooly was the guy that actually swung the pipe.
The lead pipe in the kitchen. I do declare.
I do declare.
Colonel Mustard.
But yeah, I bet it was an Iowa pork, so it's not as good. Okay, so Aiden, can you pull up that graphic of what the Big 12 put out, which is, can I make just one copywriting beef with this here? So for those of you that are watching on YouTube, this is what the Big 12 put out as far as the tiebreaker situation, who's in and what game is in there. And
very
if you're not,
official, just on a Word document.
and if you're, this font though, this is a Google Doc. This is a Google Docs font. This is a Google Doc for sure that someone screenshotted and put on Twitter or whatever. Hey, Cassandra is good at her job and she's a third-year marketing student. And she just wrote down what one of the associate ADs told her to write down.
Well, she forgot to tab one of the bullet points.
Yeah, so that's the beef. But if you're listening just in the audio version, this is that it's just a Google Doc text of what all the scenarios with who's in what. So to summarize this, there are 4 teams that have the possibility of being 7-2.
Well, yes, yeah, to be 7-2.
4 teams that have the capacity to be 7-2. BYU,
there are
Arizona,
technically 9 teams still in play, but chaos would have to.
It's mainly
3.
It's
really 3 teams.
It's 4. Well, 4 teams have the ability to be 7-2, which is BYU if they beat Houston, Arizona State if they beat Arizona, Iowa State if they beat Kansas State, and then Colorado if they beat Oklahoma State. So there's those 4 teams have the capacity of being 7-2. If 2 of them lose, well, just the 2 that are remaining are your 2 teams that go to the championship game. There you go. Bing, bang, boom. Easy. If all 4 of them win, Iowa State and Arizona State are in. Bing, bang, boom. Easy. No tiebreakers needed. To execute that, tiebreakers are needed, but there's no crazy situations. The thing gets weird when you have one of those 4 teams that lose. If Arizona State loses or Colorado loses, then Iowa State's in regardless. Nothing else matters.
They got to win.
Well, yes. This is all assuming that Iowa State wins. If Iowa State gets 7-2, they beat Kansas State. So, but if BYU loses, then you start entering weird tiebreaker territory. So the document they put out had, with a BYU loss, in a 3-team tie, meaning that Arizona State won, Colorado won, Iowa State won, BYU lost. In that situation, BYU loses. And then enter, indent, next bullet point. If Texas Tech defeats West Virginia, then enter, indent. If Baylor beats Kansas and Cincinnati beats TCU, Colorado versus Iowa State, enter, no indent. Otherwise, Colorado versus Arizona State, enter, shift tab to redo one of the
rock,
indents.
paper, scissors.
If West Virginia defeats Texas Tech, Arizona State versus Iowa State. My beef here, for those that are watching, that otherwise makes very little sense. What are we otherwising?
That's what I'm saying.
That needs to be one tab in. So to clarify what this document actually is, the only situation, and you can clear that off if you want, Aiden, but the only situation where Iowa State wins and does not get to the title game is that the 3 teams of Iowa State, Arizona State, Colorado win and BYU loses. And then you've got a 3-way tie with Iowa State, Colorado, Arizona State. And Texas Tech wins.
They host West Virginia.
And if Texas Tech wins, if Kansas loses and TCU loses, then Iowa State's still in.
And Kansas hosts or goes to
Kansas goes to Baylor. And Cincinnati or TCU is at Cincinnati.
Correct.
I think.
Yep.
But anyway, so its situation is Iowa State, Colorado, Arizona State win. BYU loses, Tech wins, and then Baylor and or Cincinnati would have lost. To really translate that to something usable, because I think when you look at all that, obviously the first thing is just win. Like that is step 1. It's like step 0 to even consider this conversation. Now, if everybody loses, you can get some weird shit that happens, but win and let everything else take care of itself. So as far as rooting interest is concerned, all of those things are ands, meaning that there has to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games that go in exactly the way they need to in order for Iowa State not to get in. So in any condition, if one of those links in the chain is broken, then Iowa State win and you're in. Doesn't matter. So as far as a rooting interest, anything that happens to break this chain means that, and I text this to you guys just because I had to get it out of my own head and just to alleviate the stress of people watching it on Saturday, or really either alleviate stress or fully fill in the picture, is if you're watching and any of these things have happened by the time Iowa State plays or Iowa State's done playing, win and you're in. So Oklahoma State plays Colorado on Friday. If Colorado loses, Iowa State's in.
That'd be neat. What an upset.
Iowa State win and you're in. Boom. If Colorado loses. If Texas Tech, who plays at 11, if they lose, and then any tie-breaking situation is in Iowa State's favor. So if Texas Tech loses, they play at 11, Iowa State's in. Again, assuming that they win. If Colorado loses, they're in. If Tech loses, they're in. If Arizona State loses to Arizona, that's a 2:30 kickoff. Iowa State's in. If Baylor beats Kansas and Cincinnati beats TCU, those things have to happen together. Doesn't matter what else happens, Iowa State's in. And then if all of those don't go, none of those come into play, BYU is hosting Houston at 9:15. And that would be the one where potentially, BYU wins. There's the link that's broken. Iowa State's in. So really, you're rooting against Colorado, against Texas Tech, against Arizona State, and then for Baylor and for Cincinnati and for BYU. So like I tweeted this thing out as far as what you're shooting for. If any one of those things happen, Iowa State win and you're in. And it feels to me like, obviously you can't guarantee anything, but the odds are fairly high that one of those things falls apart, but you never know.
Yeah, I think, my biggest thing is, since there is so much that needs to happen, just win.
Win.
Get to 10 wins and celebrate that for 15 minutes and then focus on, okay, now let's see where we're at.
Yeah, and it might be the case where like if Oklahoma State can somehow pull off an upset.
I think Colorado wins by 30.
Yeah, they're way better than Oklahoma State. But like theoretically, if they can, then you go into Saturday knowing that's going to be the case. If West Virginia beats Texas Tech, it's an 11 a.m. kick. You're going to know that by 2:30, 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
That if that happens, win and you're in. Like these things can happen kind of chronologically, and it doesn't mean that like the most sure of those to me is BYU beating Houston is the most likely of those to happen.
Yeah, you'd think, but you've seen crazier stuff happen.
Yeah, but how many 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? How many 16 parlays have you hit?
Not enough.
So now let's put that off to the side because the tie-breaking stuff ultimately win first, and then any one of those things happens. What are your thoughts about this Kansas State game going into this Kansas State game?
Well, their strength is run. They run the ball just about as well as Kansas does. DJ Giddens is like a 1,200 yard rusher already in the year. Avery Johnson's not a strong thrower. He wants to run. They hit a skid there for a while. They lost to Houston. They lost a few in a row. And Kleiman was getting real emotional. I'm not going to get into details, but he had some personal stuff going on that may affect his wife, which he's like concerned about. She's healthy, everything's fine, but they're scared. So he had some personal stuff going on, which I think kind of got his mind off of football. I did see recently that he told Connor Riley, I think is his name, their offensive coordinator, who was a line coach for them. He told him he wanted to unleash Avery Johnson and he wanted to let him run more.
Okay.
And then they went on and just beat the shit out of Cincinnati. So
they also got smacked by Arizona State.
But that's before he unleashed him. They didn't get smacked, did they? They lost by like 3, didn't they?
No, they got smacked.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, they got smacked.
So I am worried that if we can force Avery Johnson to pass the ball, like Iowa State's chances a lot, it's going to be cold. It's going to be real cold. So if you have tickets, go. Senior night, chance to get 10 wins. You know when the last time Iowa State got 9 regular season wins?
1904?
1906.
Damn it.
Yep. So this is the best season we have seen in a long time.
In roughly 100 years.
A little over 100 years, yeah.
May I put a slightly, I wouldn't say necessarily positive spin, but a not negative spin on the Kansas State rushing game has an advantage against Iowa State?
Let's do it. 2
points. One, what is Kansas State not awesome at offensively?
Passing.
Okay. It's going to be very cold, which makes that harder. Has Iowa State played a team that runs the ball well, but doesn't throw it all that great?
Quite a few, I'd say.
I think 2 come to mind.
UCF might be one.
And? 2 games ago.
I want to say Kansas, but
they throw the ball as well.
Jalen Daniels, he looked like...
They throw the ball as well.
Heisman.
Cincinnati ran for 270 yards against Iowa State.
And passed for 88, 68?
61, I think. 61, 63, something like that.
Yeah.
Iowa State won that game by 17 points. So it is possible that you don't want to give up 250 rushing yards. But with the way that game can go, or the way that game it's possible for that game to go, I think Iowa State could have enough. If they hold Kansas State to like 175 yards rushing, because of how hard it's going to be for them to throw, one, generally, because Avery Johnson isn't as strong of a thrower, especially in the cold, and 2, against Iowa State's secondary, where they don't have a ton of one-on-one matchups. Like they don't have a Lockett or last year, Sanat is at the tight end.
Yeah.
They have a couple guys that are good players, but they don't have any dominant receivers.
Yes, Keegan Johnson transferred from Iowa.
Right. He's a good player, but like he's not a dominant guy. Like you would trust Iowa State's corners or secondary against any one of their passing guys. Their run game is the threat. So Iowa State has won 2 games giving up 250 or 270 yards because they can squash the passing game really, really well. And on the other side, you can push a team into a game flow that they have to start questioning if they want to keep running, if they're able to execute on offense and special teams, which special teams to me is the thing that's going to make or break this game.
Kicking those balls are going to feel like you're kicking rocks. It's going to suck.
Conradi's still a dog though.
He is a dog.
Now, other point as to why I'm less like nervous. Kansas State's good at running the game or good at their running game. But how would you prepare? How would you think that you would prepare for an opponent? Just generally, like before the game starts.
Watch film.
And who are you watching film of?
The upcoming opponent.
And when they play, do you want to watch them play? Who do you want to watch them against?
The team they just kicked the shit out of, Cincinnati, because they're on the same defense as Iowa State.
So you want to watch a team that has a common opponent.
Yeah.
Or not a common opponent, a team that runs a like scheme to yours. Kansas State just played, you mentioned it, Cincinnati. The exact same scheme that Iowa State runs, and they showed all the cards on the table. If you're going to unleash Avery Johnson, okay, they just unleashed Avery Johnson. How did they attack this defense? What gaps, what weaknesses in this scheme did they try and expose?
I told you, man, bunch of dinguses down there.
So
fell right into our trap.
You're going to have the best film that you can have is Tyson Veit's film, because even if schematically they took advantage of what you're doing, you can then tweak the scheme to make sure they don't take advantage of that thing. And if they didn't take advantage of it schematically and Cincinnati just screwed up, then you can show Sadowski or Cooper or whoever the player is that plays that exact position that they play, and they say, hey, when you see 2 tight ends to this side and we say you have to fit that outside tight end physically, whatever, this is what happens if you don't do that, because this is our defense and this is the play they ran against it. He got beat. Boom. So like the fact that Kansas State's offense showed what they want to do to this Iowa State defense, the learning curve of what they want to do should shorten quite a bit. So that first drive or 2 drives are like what Kansas did, were like 6 straight touchdown drives. And then afterwards, in the second half, Kansas scored 1 offensive touchdown. So like that, the adjustments that Haycock is going to be able to make, those should likely happen faster because you have awesome teaching tape ahead of time. Now, the flip side of that is Kansas State, Avery Johnson would have seen what this defense kind of looks like. So you can use that same sort of example as like
a Temu version of it.
Yeah, they got Temu Iowa State against Cincinnati. So he's going to have a little more familiarity with being able to theoretically throw against things or what the reads look like. But it's going to be a different version because Iowa State is going to learn from the mistakes that Cincinnati had to correct to what Kansas State wants to do. So,
but I don't think Avery Johnson had any passing. I think they had
just a lot of running.
Yeah, a bunch of running.
A lot of running, and that's what they want to do. And Kansas State's going to run the ball. Like I would be surprised if Iowa State holds Kansas State to under like 175 yards rushing. I would be surprised.
Under 200, I'd be surprised.
But I do think that the advantage of the passing game is that when you start getting into situations, either like if they can get Kansas State off script at all, like 3rd and 8, and you start forcing them to must throw situations on what will likely be a slick field because it's going to be wet and cold.
Oh, night game, anything about
and
that.
It's a night game.
Gee, dang it.
So like there's not going to be a lot of passing game accuracy that they're going to be able to rely on. So Kansas State, this is going to be a hell of a game. There's a reason why this line is, it's what, 2.5? Like there's a reason this line is as little as it is, but more or less, I spent the last 12 minutes talking about why the running game for Kansas State, although they are really good, I'm not like, oh my God, they're going to run for 300 yards and we're not going to be able to stop them at all. They're a good team.
Oh, I've got Doomsday going. Also, I will say, sorry to interrupt you. We've only had one guy surpass 100 yards rushing in a game, and Kansas State's giving up less than 100 yards total rushing per game. Do you know who that was and what game it was? Time's up.
Jackson,
Abu Sama versus Houston.
It wasn't Jackson against Baylor?
101.
Oh, they had two guys that had like 95 yards against Baylor.
Yeah, Rocco and Jackson.
And Carson.
Action Jackson.
Here's Tim Brando. Who do we have? Is it on Fox or ESPN?
It's Connor Onion and...
Ooh, that's a good one.
Oh, that's a real name.
That's a good one.
Who's his other guy?
I forget
Wait,
it.
Connor Onion's real name?
Real name. He's good.
Yeah.
He's good.
Yeah.
Not sure I know who Connor
He's,
Onion is.
I don't remember if he's called a game this year or not for Iowa State, but yeah,
He's good. He's good. He has a very Kevin Harlan. He's like baby Kevin Harlan.
Oh, yeah, maybe
Mark Helfrich.
I'm not
That's what it
recognizing.
is.
Mark Helfrich. That's a great
Yeah.
Oh,
broadcasting
wow.
duo.
Old
remember who
Oregon
it was.
coach?
Yeah.
Wow.
Great broadcasting duo.
Yeah.
Good broadcasting duo. So for those of you that are not going to the game, you got a good team.
Well, Rocco was probably hoping that we're going to have the same. You see what he said after the. He's like, hey, wait a second. Are you guys doing the Utah game after the Cincinnati game? You guys doing the Utah game? He said it to, who was that guy? Because it was Devin Gardner and Tim Brando.
I don't know.
It was Devin Gardner
who's their sideline guy?
Oh, I forget.
Yeah, but he asked him, he goes, wait, one more thing. Are you guys going to be doing the Utah game? He's like, I don't make those decisions, pal. He goes, we're undefeated when you guys call our games. So they didn't do the Utah game. But
Yeah.
So that's all I've got, Jeff. You got anything else?
The only I've
Maui. We didn't even talk about Maui.
yeah, two last little things. One is about Maui, which is
Great gutty win by the boys last night, beating Auburn. Just a nice 61-57 victory. Joshua Jefferson's a dog, man. Double like against those bigs. That's impressive.
game hasn't happened yet.
18 points, 11 rebounds. Wow.
Wow.
Too bad Stephen Gurr. That sucked.
The only thing would be if there's any fans that are still like TJ needs to show emotion. What happened? So we're recording this after UConn played and before Iowa State played. That's the time window that we're recording this in. Dan Hurley is a genius basketball coach, but his emotions on the sideline get the best of him more often than they don't. And in that game, he's been chirping at the referees the entire time. They're in a tight game with Memphis. They were
man
trailing.
doesn't change his underwear the entire season.
Really?
Something like that. His wife will wash his underwear. He'll wear the same pair of underwear the entire season.
That's weird.
Something like that.
At least they wash it.
You guys change underwear?
Matt Campbell doesn't. He hasn't changed his underwear in 14 weeks. That's why he hasn't. He can just wear black. I bet we were script Cyclones again this game.
Ooh, I bet that'd be fun.
All black.
And whatever
I'm
the
predicting
seniors choose.
I'm predicting all black with the white Cyclone script.
I bet
Sorry, continue.
That's right. But anyway, for the people that are like, oh, TJ needs to show emotion. So the two instances where I think further prove the point that TJ actually has some method to his madness and is probably on the right side of this one. There was an instance, so game goes into overtime. UConn makes this crazy comeback to get into overtime against Memphis with the Tyrese Hunter point guard for Memphis, which we were having a discussion before. Have bygones become bygones with Tyrese Hunter now that he's not in the toxic situation of Texas anymore?
Bread's been broken. I'm happy for him.
Good for him. I'm kind of in the camp of like, good on you, because without Tyrese Hunter, there is no We Will Collective, which means all the success that Iowa State is having right now likely is at least drastically hindered, if not impossible.
That's right. And Bloom and not able to afford Cal Canardi.
There you go. So if game goes into overtime and one of UConn's players shoves one of Memphis's players, and then one of Memphis's players, Dane Danger, formerly of Illinois.
Baylor, then Illinois, yep.
And so he comes over and kind of like chest bumps the guy from UConn.
Played Illinois last year in the tournament.
Yeah. And so kind of like chest bumps the guy from UConn and just says, hey, don't do that to my friend. Something to that effect. They call a technical on the UConn guy. They then go to review everything. They come back and call a technical on Memphis's guy, which is probably undeserved for the action that he took. And Penny Hardaway, in that moment, didn't like the call of that technical because they were either trailing by 3 or it was a really close game, and they would have gotten free throws from the UConn technical, and they offset with the other technical. So he goes up to the officials, and they're explaining their rationale, and you could see his face go, the expression of, come on, I don't believe that. But then pats him on the shoulder and goes, I get it, and walks away. That's how Penny Hardaway handled that situation. And then later in the game, there's 40 seconds to play. It's tied 92-92. It's on UConn's offensive end. UConn misses a shot, and one of UConn's players goes up for a rebound, gets called for an offensive foul. 50-50 kind of ticky-tack foul. But worst case scenario, you head down. Memphis shoots 2 free throws. Let's say they make them both. You're down 2 with 40 seconds to play in the ball. Not the worst case scenario. Well, in that moment, Dan Hurley starts continuing to chirp at the officials and chirp and chirp and chirp and chirp and chirp and walk out on the court and point and chirp and chirp. And they finally, for the first time, tee him up.
It's that get laid.
That's probably something to that effect. And Memphis goes down, hits the 2 technical free throws, hits the 2 free throws on the common foul, and then gets the ball back. I think they missed the shot afterwards, but they went from being down 2 to having the ball to now being down 4 with 40 seconds to play in overtime because of a technical foul. Hell would freeze over before TJ Otzelberger in that situation would react to the degree where he would get a technical foul.
Yeah, because he's a grown man.
So that's just one of those things. Like for those people that are like, he needs to show more emotion. You want that? You want to get a game lost because you have a guy who can't control his emotions on the sideline? Now again, Dan Hurley, great coach. But that moment lost them a game.
I'd rather have TJ be more like TJ than TJ be more like Fran McCaffrey.
I would agree.
Yeah.
The last thing I was going to say, this is, and for those that are the loyal listeners that are still here, it is Thanksgiving week. And I wanted to say 2 things on this and more of a sentimental thing, which Thanksgiving week is obviously a time when a lot of people will think about being thankful. What are they thankful for? I'm thankful for you guys for the show. This is a fun thing we get to do every week. It's get to hang out with some friends on a Monday, actually get paid for it.
Here.
But another thing, and this is sort of sparked by, I was listening this morning, I was coaching at the gym and Linkin Park came on and thinking of Chester Bennington, and Chester Bennington died by suicide a few years ago. I don't remember exactly when it was. And this is Thanksgiving week. And Thanksgiving to me is not just about you being thankful for someone internally. Communicate who you're thankful to the people that you're thankful for, because you don't know what they're going through. And I'm not saying that like Chester Bennington wouldn't have done what he did had someone said, hey, I'm thankful for you, but it can't hurt. And you don't know where someone is in their life. If you are thankful for them being in your life, say it. Like it's literally the week of thanks. So thanks is internal, that you're thankful, but it's also external to communicate to the people that you're thankful for, that you're thankful for. So I'm thankful for you guys, thankful for CF, thankful for the fans. But again, just as an encouragement to the people that you're thankful for, if you have a nice thing in your head that you want to say that nice thing. No one's ever regretted saying a nice thing.
No, and I always feel better whenever I do something nice or say something nice. I mean, yeah, it takes no more effort than saying something mean.
So that was just my little be thankful during Thanksgiving week and express that thanks to those that are around.
I like that. I did not come prepared to speak like that. So I appreciate that though. Very, very truthful. So thank you to all the sickos and the loyal listeners who are still listening. As always, remember, adopt. Don't shop.